Hi, welcome back to the channel. This is our third interviews, Daren. Welcome back.
Thank you.
So for those who don't know Daren's, you just want to quickly introduce yourself.
I'm a newbie retail investor, investing only starting from August 2020. I invest in mostly Tesla and some Apple.
Yeah, Daren, actually, I've seen your videos and then some of your videos I actually shared with my friends in the Telegram groups, right? Actually, one questions that I get not just from one
Yes.
person, actually more than one, is that people are curious because you have been sharing in Twitter that you are buying shares like Tesla, buying shares like Apple's, and the size of the purchase is also not like small amount. For example, like 1 or 2 thousand, right? Sometimes it could be like a sizable amount, at least for the viewers. And people are curious actually, how come you have so much capital to deploy to buy all these Tesla and Apple shares?
Fair question. So 2 points here. One, I've been in sales for most of my career. And I've been in tech sales for a lot of my career. Sales is a function that tends to pay you based on your output. It's not like accounting or HR where you get a pretty stable salary. So the good or bad thing in sales is you can earn very little or you can earn a lot.
Okay.
So the more you hustle, the more you get based on impact. It's not about how hard you work, it's about how much impact you make. The deals you close, the customers that you bring into the business. So that's allowed me to actually accumulate cash over years. And again, I only started investing 2 years ago, which meant I accumulated around $250,000 or more in cash in my bank. It wasn't doing anything. That's the worst mistake to make, right? Every time you always hear this thing, the best time to invest was 10 years ago, second best time is now. I didn't even invest now. I only invested when I had no choice in the middle of the pandemic. I had too much free time. So that's one. I'm in sales and I had a lot of cash reserves for my sales bonuses. Second, I work in an industry that pays relatively well. So you work in tech, there's some industries that pay well, right? Like some of you in investment banking, some in the past was oil and gas, now it's tech. And tech jobs are growing. So I think working in the right industry, in the right function that gives you a good cash pool every month is very helpful, especially for newer investors in the accumulation phase, like me. The other thing is I also use investment loans. So I've already taken up about 100,000 of investment loans, mostly buying Apple, because to me it's a relatively safe investment, and also buying Tesla. So that's how I've been managing to buy or dollar cost average Tesla and Apple stock in a more material amount in the past 2 years.
Yeah. So can you share a bit more, like for example, in terms of the cash pile that you have accumulated?
Yeah.
Have you like fully deployed all this cash?
Yeah, I'm very cash poor right now. I've got very little cash.
Okay.
Yes.
And what about the borrowing, the margin that
Yeah.
you mentioned, right? Let's say comparing to your current level now
Yeah.
versus like the maximum leverage that you are willing to tolerate or
Yes.
comfortable, right? Do you still have room to actually ramp up the borrowing by even more shares?
So I'm able to get more margin, but I will not because, as we all hear from many friends at this time, and also people who've been investing far longer, that this is probably a time to keep margin at a very manageable or lower amount. Ideally zero, but for me right now it's about 12%. So I'll make a personal goal to not go beyond 15% on margin. Because many of us, we've heard stories from friends getting margin called right now, especially as our collateral stock and the stock prices drop.
Thanks a lot for the sharing. I think for today's discussion, I just want to chat a little bit more about news. In the past, let's say 3 months, we see that the market has not behaved like in the past 2 years, right? There's volatility and so on. But before we jump in to talk about the news and how investors should behave or react to all this news, right?
Yeah.
Maybe can you just like share with us your outlook or how do you see the market now with wars going, inflation increasing, and so on?
So on the stock market specifically, and I invest only in the US stock market, I think in the short term it's bearish as many people feel that prices may be sideways. But then I think to what Boon shared in the earlier video as well, that this is a good time for people who are accumulating for the long term. So I feel that the people who have the opportunity to accumulate stocks that they have long-term conviction in, this is a good opportunity. For anyone who needs the money right now or we haven't trained ourselves emotionally or mentally to accept the rides or the downswings. Like Tesla's been down like 30%. Many people have investments where they're down 40, 50, 60% right now. We've got to be at peace, at calm. And I fully acknowledge that right now this is a very stressful time for many different people. I'm personally okay with it from a stock market perspective. I'm actually more worried about what's actually happening in the real world than the stock prices itself.
Yep.
So I think everyone faces different challenges right now.
Yep. I think totally agree with you. We observe the share price because we invested in these companies.
Yeah.
But share price is one thing, right? The other part is the real business, the life that we have to live, right? It could be different because of all this tension from the, geopolitical tension and so on. Yeah. Actually, let's go into the main topics, which is like all this, news, right? The reason I want to bring out this topic is also because I observe that among especially new investors, basically they're watching news every day. It could be like news related to inflation, economy, job, Federal Reserve, company-specific news, right? There's so many different news. And then maybe for someone who is young, they don't know like how important is this news, right? It's like, okay, Federal Reserve increase interest rate. Is this important or not? For younger investor, it might or new investor, they might not know. So I just want to run through a couple of like a list with you, and then maybe we can just discuss like what's your take on that, whether you pay attention to those factor, and we can keep it long or short, however you like. Okay, so let's start from the first one. Let's start from economy. You have heard that people talk about GDP growth and inflation.
Yes.
Are these two important to you? Are you focusing a lot on these factors?
I think about them in a slightly different way. Specifically on inflation. In the moment of high inflation, as raw material prices rise across industries, I feel that companies that are strong that means they've got good cash reserves, good profit margins, strong in that product pipeline is very strong, high product differentiation, and strong ability to attract great talent. There will be a consolidation in those industries where the strong companies thrive, and everyone else has a much tougher time. Because, example, Tesla has raised prices 2 times in the past 5 days, and it still takes you 4 months to get a car on average around the world to buy a Model 3 or Model Y. It's very hard for other automakers to do that. In fact, some automakers actually reducing their prices, which is insane when raw material prices are going up.
Yeah.
So I think of inflation as something that is good for strong companies, but very, very tough for everyone else.
Do you think this is like a good development? For example, when I heard about this Tesla raising their car prices, right? Yes, if you look at it from a financial statement perspective, you will say that it is good. It shows that the company's revenue will increase, and then it shows that the company has pricing power, right? These are all good. But on the other hand, if this kind of trend continue, which nobody can say it won't continue, right? It could increase by another 10, 20, 30% in the next 6 months, right? What happened is that the car prices will become so expensive that people will just stop buying, and it will become a concern with regards to demand, right? So what's your take on that?
So it depends on different people's perspective. For environmentalists, yay, less people buying cars. Average car prices in the US roughly about 45,000 right now, all-time highs.
Yes.
So we need sustainable inflation, which I guess the Fed sees as 2%. 2% is good, healthy inflation, not too high, not too low. And I think of it also from a mission standpoint. Tesla's mission is to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. If cars get more expensive, that's not helping the mission in the long term. So Tesla wants to introduce lower prices. They want to introduce more affordable vehicles as well. And they will do that in the future with lower priced models. But it's going to be harder for them to do that when raw materials are so scarce. If they're selling every single $60,000 car, why would a company release a $25,000 car? It's not because, and in Elon's case, it's not because they don't want to, but it's almost like they can't. They don't have the materials to support that scale. So I think governments and also like central banks are working very hard to reduce inflation, but the impact of reducing inflation, which is increasing interest rates, has a short to mid-term negative impact on economy. So that's the tension.
Just to follow up on that with regards to the inflation, right, is this term on value chain, right?
Yeah.
You have heard that Elon Musk also talk about value chain. They just want to focus on the producing the cars that they are manufacturing now and less focus in terms of like new models, right? So we can see that this value chain, there's a real problem with that, right? Whether it could be in semicon or also other industry, for example, like energies, right?
Yeah.
So is this, let's say, supply chain issues a big concern from you as an investor?
For me, because I invest in two companies, Tesla and Apple, that these two make up about 95% of my total investment portfolio. They are companies that are very vertically integrated in a world where diversification and outsourcing is the norm. So actually, this makes these two companies stronger. Tesla is able to redesign their own chips. They're able to actually craft their own batteries. Apple does their own chip manufacturing in-house as well. They don't produce things in-house, but they design in-house. That gives them a bit more leverage and power rather than waiting for Intel's chip pipeline. I think for me as an investor, because of what I invest in right now, this sets the companies I invest in up for long-term success. They've got a lot more ability to change their fate just because they're both already pretty large in their respective fields. And they've got their own expertise to be able to either buy suppliers, buy expertise, or design it themselves. Yeah, so I'm more confident actually, compared to a time where it's easy for everyone in industry to get supplies. Yeah.
Yep.
Now that's not to say that these companies do not have challenges. Like Apple in late last year, they told investors, our iPhone supplies may be a bit lower. Or Tesla in last quarter, they couldn't ship some cars because they were missing some like USB-C chips as well.
Yeah.
So they're not immune to it, but the impact is definitely a lot less. Like Apple is still producing more iPads, more iPhones, more laptops. Tesla is still producing more vehicles at the time when other companies in the industry are shutting down factories or reducing production.
Yeah. So my take is that you see this value change doesn't affect just one or two companies, it affects the entire industry.
Yes.
And companies like Tesla and Apple, because they are well vertically integrated, right? So that one become a strength for them in a difficult environment. So it just make them stand out like these are the quality attributes of a quality companies.
Yes, and again, this is my very biased view because I'm a investor in these two companies. So take what I say with a grain of salt. Look at other different point of view as well.
Okay, the next one, just now we touched on a little bit on inflation and you mentioned about like Fed raising interest rate, right?
Yeah.
Let's go into more details. Just this morning, Federal Reserve already announced that 25 basis point or 0.25% increase in interest rate, and it's going to increase for the rest of the year, and we might hit close to like let's say 2% by end of the year. Is this a concern for you?
Maybe I'm naive, but it's not a huge concern right now for me. Right now, it's not. But if interest rates rise further than that, beyond 2%, and we start seeing the opposite of inflation or consumer confidence goes down a lot, then I'll be a lot more worried. Right now, there's actually some parts of the economy that's doing well, like unemployment is at a record low in many countries. There's still a lot of fundamental innovation going on in many fields. It's okay for now, but this is just one step towards, it's like the multiverse, right? It's a branch towards a better or a worse future.
Yep.
I do not know.
Yeah, because why I'm bringing up inflation is, you know, just looking at companies like Tesla, right?
Yeah.
They're selling cars.
Yeah.
Cars is not something that a consumer will just pull out from their pocket and just say, I'm buying this out of my pockets, right? It will usually be funded by taking up auto loan, right? So you can imagine that, let's say if interest rate go up by 2%,
Yes.
multiply that with the price of the car, right? It's become the cost of owning the car will just become much higher, right? Do you think that these kind of things will affect the demands on the car and hence will affect the share price or
I think most countries in the world are not as blessed as Singapore or New York City with great public transport. A car is a necessity for many people, regardless of the price. Unless it's so crazy, like interest rates are like 20%, people are still going to get a car. They may get a cheaper car. They may get a more affordable car. But they will still have a car for most people in the world.
Yeah. The next question, right? Just now we also talked about like now is bear markets, and then we can see that the volatility has been increasing, and one common volatility indicator is just looking at the volatility index, right? Or the short name is VIX. So my questions to you is that how much are you paying attention to indicators like all these VIX and just in general investor sentiments, right? Is this something that you pay attention to or no?
Not directly, and the reasons because the way I invest, it's not so much just the financial markets or the candles or the earnings per share. I'm really a lot more passionate about just the nuts and bolts of a company. I see Boon using an iPhone, I'm very happy. I see a Tesla driving down Orchard Road, I'm very happy. That's what moves me as an investor more. When I see a Tesla owner switch to a Ford, I will be a lot more worried than the VIX fear sentiment.
Yes.
So that's how I'm wired as an investor personally.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's my view.
Would you advise to a investor to say, okay, actually doesn't really matter and don't pay attention to this kind of like sentiment?
I won't say that because I think of it as it's like when we think about how we learn in different ways. So I think like how we invest in different ways as well. Different things motivate, move us, gives us conviction. So our thing is, as an investor, look at all the possible signals. Like Boon would mention, like there's so many signals for investors to look at right now.
Yeah.
Over time, you want to narrow down. Like, okay, what's the noise for me, and what's the signal for me? Because certain things that are very important to Boon is the opposite for me, and vice versa.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So don't try to be someone else. Be you. At the end of the day, what we want is financial freedom, strong returns. How we get there doesn't matter. If let's say Boon is spending 1 hour reading on the stock markets, I'm spending 3 hours enjoying a Tesla ride, and we both get good returns, that works, no?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's a very good advice. My next follow-up questions on that is that, it's not just news that we are seeing, right? There's also, investor also go to, let's say, YouTube,
Yes.
and you are YouTuber yourself, right? So different YouTubers has different content, and then they might talk different things, different topics, right? And the way they see things also is very different, right? But for viewers, they will just watch all this YouTube content and maybe read some blogs and just want to digest the news around the world, right?
Yeah.
And at least for me personally, I do see that there's the influence that come from some, let's say, YouTubers, right, can be quite huge, So what's your take with regards to like investor just looking for information on the YouTube space or this chat group or blogs? Do you think that they should actually pay much attention to these chatters?
I think you should all decide for your own self, like again, what signal to you, as said earlier, and also know what are everyone's motivations. Like, I'm a Tesla investor. Am I going to say that Tesla is good? Probably. Am I going to call out the things that Tesla doesn't do well? From time to time. But again, what's my view towards it? So I'd say actually look for contrarian views, look for different views. Again, contrarian not for the sake of being contrarian, but in a well-grounded, sensible way. Someone who gives you very clear points for why this may or may not be a good investment. Find views that challenge your perspective and not just validate your point of view. Because there's a lot of content out there that validates your point of view. Very easy to find.
Yes.
What's very hard to find is to find a point of view that is opposite of yours that you respect. It is opposite and you respect it.
Yeah.
Very hard to find. Yeah, like if you ask me like what's a great Tesla bear to learn from, I don't have a very good answer right now. You'll be shades of grey, like Gary Black, for instance, on Twitter. He's not very bullish on full self-driving. And he gives his reasons why. And I respect that point of view.
Yeah.
I don't have to agree with it, but I respect the point of view. Yeah, so that's what I would call out for. Look for contrarian points of view and even points that validate what you believe in, your investment thesis. It needs to be something that you respect, and these people ideally have a long-term track record.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually some of these people, they do share their own investment outcomes, their own investment choices. I think that's helpful. Look at everyone's conflict of interest. Am I selling you a chair? Am I selling you a course? Do I stand to benefit if more people buy my stock or my crypto? Look at all of that.
Okay, let's go into more details with regards to our YouTuber friends, Ken, also known as Chicken Genius. So recently, he shared in his Twitter is that he's actually selling a covered call on Tesla positions. And for those who are not sure on what is covered call, essentially, if you sell a covered call, you are giving up the upside, right? In return, you get some premiums. So that is the covered call portion. That is something that is bearish. So he, as a long-term Tesla bull, suddenly sounds so bearish because of all these, wars and recession risk, right? What was your take on this?
So every time we get a piece of information or news, we need to dig a little bit deeper. So as Ken posted on Twitter, he's got a May expiry with a strike price of $770.
Correct.
And based on the market, the premium is $90. That means he breaks even as long as Tesla price is below $860. As of today's video, Tesla is right now about 830, plus minus, go up and down. The follow-up question I would ask is, what percentage of all his stock, Tesla stock is that? Because he's got around 5,000 Tesla stock. So if he only buys a covered call,
Sell covered call.
sell covered call at 5% of his stock, it's very different from him doing it for 80% of his stock.
Yeah.
And as he called out, he's long-term bullish on Tesla. This is, in a sense, insurance because he feels that what could go wrong outweighs what could go right now. So I think there's still a lot of nuance here because we don't know what percentage of his total holdings he's buying this on.
Yep.
And I think that makes a very big difference.
Yep.
Yeah, that's like saying, I use the Apple Watch, but do I use it one day of the whole year or every day of the whole year?
Yes.
So that's my call on it. The challenge with things online is that it's very easy to oversimplify things. Or we see a headline and we say, that's the conclusion. So if you're a long-term investor or even a short-term trader, like look beyond the headlines, look beyond the story, understand the story behind the numbers or the story behind the story.
Yeah. So for those let's say new investors, right, who has been following Ken, right? Let's say if they also follow him into this kind of trades, right? What's your advice for this kind of investors?
Actually, I think, and that's a big risk. Like people may think, oh, Ken is bearish about Tesla, let me sell my Tesla stock now, or let me do the same thing for 100% of my Tesla stock. My call is, don't take an action based on what few people are doing. And even though everyone, and even Ken himself says, okay, what I do is unique to my circumstances, you do not follow what I do, or at least not blindly.
Yeah.
Do your own research first before doing it. So same thing. Well, right now, example, like a lot of people's sentiment are not so good in the market. Generally down. I mean, today it's up as of today's recording because of the Chinese government saying, we will defend the stock market, we'll make sure everything is fine, price stability be there.
Yes.
It's very green today right now. But generally it's down. Just because 9 out of 10 of people are bearish doesn't mean that you need to agree with it. Majority isn't right in the stock market. In fact, majority lose money in the stock market. You do not want to be the majority.
Yeah.
You want to be the minority because that's what investors get, how they get alpha, by being the minority, not the majority. I would say have a few different people to consider, get different sources to get advice from, and also don't make a decision immediately. If you're a long-term investor, making a decision now, next week or next month shouldn't change things. And again, it comes back to what gives you conviction. For me, I'm seeing more people buy Tesla. Right now in Singapore, I see 5 Teslas on average per day. When we were having breakfast recently, we saw like 3 Teslas just in a 1 hour breakfast.
Yeah, that's true.
So for me, in my mind, it's like, I'm bullish.
Yes.
And this is Singapore where we're not selling that many Teslas. In fact, Singapore only sold like 45 Teslas last month, which is really low. Because Teslas are record sales in every other country, most other countries around the world, in US, Europe and China. Come back to what are your signals that give you conviction and look at first principles. Is there really something wrong with the company? So I'll give you like a counter example, right? A lot of people will not buy Alibaba because the stock prices have been going down. So we also ask ourselves, are people still using Alibaba's products? Are we using Lazada in Southeast Asia? People are. Is it declining? Are they making profits or are they losing money? Look at all of that and make your own decisions rather than stock movements or what people say on YouTube as well.
I think I also need to give a shout out to Ken, right? Because to me, he's sharing his trades on the Twitter. It's not really to say, okay, please follow me. It's totally opposite of that, right? So he's using his Twitter, his YouTube to share his view on the market at that moment, and the portfolio changes that he's making, right? He explained it well in the YouTube videos just to make sure that it's totally transparent. It's not really financial advice for the viewers, we all should see it as educational materials and also something just for us to get entertained and just learn from it, right? Because there's topics that he brought up, for example, what should we watch out for to look at whether recession is coming. I think these are all good knowledges, so we should take this as a learning instead of just blindly follow. Okay.
Agree.
Yeah.
There are investors from all kinds of background.
Yeah.
And the reality is people who lose millions can afford to lose millions. Even if someone that can loses $2 million, is fine.
Yeah.
But for some investors here, you lose $2,000, that could be months of your savings.
Yeah.
And it's catastrophic. Some people actually get into divorce or lose their relationships because of poor investment decisions.
Okay, the last one that I want to ask Daren, there's this one video that you created about investor should probably just do nothing most of the time, right? Because you stay invested, just continue to stay invested. We need to learn to do less but achieve more. Okay, so actually my question is more like, let's say take a scenario whereby there's news or there's informations that actually prompt you to want to do something.
Yeah.
For example, let's say some friends that has been telling you that, okay, there might be some value change problem with the Shanghai factory of Tesla. This kind of news, right? Actually, this kind of news is happen all the time. It's just that sometimes it's so significant that you are thinking that, okay, maybe I should just temporarily selling my investment.
Yeah.
Maybe just buying back at a lower price later.
Yeah.
I mean, thoughts like this, right? So I just want to know what's your approach with regards to handling this kind of so-called news or information. How do you process it and how do you act?
Some wise investors say, know what's your exit strategy and what are the signals that would guide you towards your exit strategy. So example, like I would exit Tesla if they stop growing more than 30% year on year, potentially. Okay, I'll frame it away. I will stop buying Tesla stock if they stop growing more than 30% year on year. Doesn't mean I will sell.
Okay.
So there's two phases, right?
Yep.
It's not binary buy and sell. There's also a hole in between. So if that's one of my important signals on investing in a company, if let's say example I see a news, China decides to nationalize the Tesla Giga Shanghai factory. Hell yeah, I'm going to probably do something. I mean, it would lead me towards doing something. I'm not going to do something immediately, but I'll start learning a little bit more. What's happening here?
Yeah.
Is this a Tesla specific thing? Are they nationalizing every company? Is this a temporary thing?
Yeah.
A permanent thing? What's the root cause? Is Tesla opening 3 new factories in the US to counterweight that? Are they opening a new factory in Japan or Thailand to counterweight that? So any piece of news that comes back to the fundamentals of why I would buy or exit a company, I would act on it. Try to have like a list, right? Let's say whatever company you buy, whether it's Amazon, Microsoft, Alibaba, what are 3 reasons why I'll buy it? What are 3 reasons why I'll exit it? Every time there's news that touches one of these, pay attention. For the rest of it, it's okay.
For the rest, just do nothing. Stay invested.
Because your time is so precious. Nobody in their deathbed ever said, oh, I wish I researched Tesla stock a little bit more. Hell no.
And buy low, sell high, and generate some returns.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that's a very good response on these questions. Yeah, I think for those who haven't watched that video, right, I'll just put the link at the description. You should go and watch and just internalize it yourself. I think this do nothing is really something that is very powerful. Yeah. Okay, I think we have come to the end of the interview. Thank you so much for coming and hope that we will do it more.
Yes, and remember to click like and subscribe to Boon's channel.
Yeah, like and subscribe. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Singapore's #1 Tesla fan.
Number 1.